Good morning or afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Committee Insights, Professional Resources for Cannabis Industry Insights. I'm Brian Gilbert, the Deputy Director of Events and Education here at NCIA and your host for today's session. I'm thrilled to get back into the swing of things of recurring virtual educational programming following this hugely successful execution of our 2024 Stakeholder Summit series over the last 3 months and during the final 3-week countdown leading into our 12th annual Cannabis Industry Lobby Days next month. If this is your first time joining us, NCIA's Industry Essentials webinar series is our premier digital educational platform featuring a variety of interactive programming, allowing us to provide you timely, engaging, and essential education when you need it most. In today's exclusive webinar, we'll be delving into essential member discounts offered through our esteemed partners, BDSA, New Frontier Data, and Cannabis NewsHub. The overall session aims to provide valuable insights into leveraging professional resources tailored specifically for the cannabis industry. Throughout this webinar, our panel of experts will explore the unique offerings available through these partnerships and how they can empower your business decisions and strategies, from understanding market trends to driving growth with data-backed strategies, meeting information needs, and optimizing business decision-making. We've curated a lineup that promises to deliver actionable insights. So sit back, relax, and get ready to gain invaluable insights that will maximize the benefits of your NCIA membership that's current or soon to be activated through these essential partner discounts. So don't forget to engage with our panelists. Like I said, ask questions throughout the session. And without further ado, let's dive right in. I'll turn it right over to the Chief Knowledge Officer at New Frontier Data, Amanda Reiman, to kick things off and dive right into the program.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's a real pleasure to be here with everyone today. So the three of us represent the Education Committee for NCIA, and this is one of several webinars that we're working on, with the goal really being to help current members and new members better understand how educational resources, professional resources can help support you and your business. So if you have questions, as Brian said, that come up during our presentation today, feel free to drop those in the Q&A, and we will definitely get to them when our presentation has concluded. So let's dive in. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about how data guides strategy. And, one of the really important things that a lot of us have noticed, especially those of us that have been working in the cannabis space for a few years, is that the consumer profile is changing, the products that are on the market are changing. And even though cannabis businesses used to rely on personal knowledge of who consumers were and what they want, you can't necessarily do that anymore. Pre-legalization especially, we know that an industry of sorts existed, and a lot of what drove strategy was knowledge or assumptions about who cannabis consumers were and what they wanted. And at New Frontier Data, we conduct a consumer survey that we've been doing every year now for a few years of consumers across the country and every market. And one of the things we're able to notice with this are trends in who consumers are and what kind of products they're looking for. So if you look at shifts in demographics and product preferences over time, of course, we see that use among adults is increasing as different states legalize, as we change regulations, as we mainstream and destigmatize cannabis. We're seeing increases, and the biggest gain in those increases is among consumers 65 and over. Another trend that we're seeing is a move towards non-flower products. So previously, smoking flower was the most common way to consume cannabis. And even though flower still rules the day, we're seeing more and more consumers say either they're using both smoked and non-smoked methods of consumption, or they're moving towards non-flower only methods of consumption. Now, one big place we see this difference is between current consumers and potential consumers. So you saw that graph on the previous slide showing that use among adults is increasing. Well, a lot of this increase is coming from people that have never used cannabis before, but now that it's legal in their state, or there is a different kind of attitude around cannabis consumption, we're seeing what we call potential consumers move into the market. Now, here's one of the most interesting data points, I think, from looking at trends in cannabis, which is the difference between current consumers and potential consumers. So when you look at who current consumers are, flower is the most frequently used method of consumption among 60% of them. However, when you ask potential consumers, people that have never consumed cannabis but are open to it, 71% of them say if they were to consume cannabis, they would choose edibles. So, what does this mean for your business strategy when looking at current consumers versus potential consumers when their product preference is very different? So, what are the key takeaways? What can we learn from all of this? Well, I put this graphic up because I think this represents how a lot of cannabis businesses have been looking at strategy, which is who is right in front of me, right? The spotlight is shining on the same demographic, the same consumer group, the same product, and this is what I'm focused on. But look at all of that dark space. In that dark space exists other types of consumers, other types of product preferences. And so we really need to broaden the light to be focusing on all of these folks. The cannabis consumer universe is becoming more diverse and less like kind of what we would call the typical stoner stereotype. And it's really important to stay on top of these trends in product preferences and consumer demographics because they are always changing. So, what people prefer, how they prefer to consume, who they are, this is evolving. And so, understanding the data on consumers is a really important way to stay ahead of the trends and to notice how trends are ebbing and flowing. And finally, a lack of knowledge about these trends in consumers can prevent you from maximizing the reach of your store and your brand. So we like to say, yes, we can help you understand who's coming into your dispensary or who's using your brand. But I think an even more important question is who isn't and should be? And how do you develop strategies to reach folks that may not have heard of you or may not know how to access you, but meet all of the characteristics of people that already know you and love you? So, what does this mean for New Frontier Data and NCIA? Well, and New Frontier Data does extend some exclusive benefits to NCIA members. This includes 20% off our Equio subscription, which is our insights platform that includes everything from consumer data, policy data, total addressable market, trends in fundraising to POS data across different markets, and an audience builder so that you can use this data to determine how to reach your target audience. It also includes a free Next Tech dispensary report. So we'll be able to tell you about who consumers are that are coming into your dispensary and what else they like to do. So where do they go after they leave the dispensary? What are their other interests, which can really help in targeting? So that's it for me. I'm now going to hand it over to Lexie from BDSA, and she's going to do a bit of a deeper dive into how you can use POS data to support your customer acquisition. Lexie.
Absolutely. Thanks for passing it off, Amanda. My name is Lexie Barton. I am the Director of Client Strategy and Insights at BDSA. And I'm really going to build off where Amanda just started us, is very much understanding how you can use data to make a difference in who you're speaking to and how you go to market and how you drive growth. And let's face it, an industry that's highly dynamic, very hard to operate in certain times, and really being able to use data to help navigate that variance and all of the things that we face as cannabis industry operators and adjacent companies. So I know we've got a mix of teams on the call today, but I guarantee you that you have asked at least one of these questions. So what is my total addressable market? What markets and categories are expected to grow? Certainly relevant for anyone that's looking at this space, operational in this space, working with folks that are operational in this space, but really having a clear vision into who you're talking to and what those numbers are, right? What the value of those groups are. Also, if you're an operator, if you're thinking about talking to cannabis businesses or cannabis consumers, do you have the right product mix, product market fit? Are you competing in the right categories that are driving growth? Being able to answer the question, why are your sales declining? What is driving growth? Is it units? Is it price? All of these things may seem like a specific answer, but they all add up to be a really strong strategy that helps you be competitive and also save money. That is the thing that I love to reiterate to everyone about data, particularly for those that may not feel comfortable with data and how you leverage this, is that the point is that data drives your return on investment, just as much as it can highlight where you should go by optimizing your assortment, by understanding those category dynamics, cross-purchasing, how you perform versus competitors. There's a lot of value also in not making the wrong decision. So how much money can you save by having the insight and where you can invest and leverage those resources, especially in our industry where resources are really limited. So I've listed some of the places that data can help you have the answers here. So optimizing assortment, if you're an operational cannabis company, whether that's in retail, whether that's from the brand perspective, thinking about new product opportunities, even if you're someone who's consulting in cannabis with cannabis companies on cannabis go-to-market strategies, being able to have a really clear vision of what's driving sales growth, where you can invest in terms of those growing categories, instead of going against the tide, really positioning yourself in success to grow with the industry and with the market. And that looks a lot of different ways, down to the top players and brands, pack and product types, and then pricing. We talk about pricing as an industry every single day. I'm sure you have listened to 18 webinars just on pricing itself, but that's absolutely a place where data can really provide a lot of value for you, is actually in pricing competitively. So understanding how pricing impacts sales. Also, is it effective for you? I think we very often get into I need to match this discount. I need to match this discount. I need to match this discount. But when do we ever step back and measure if those decisions and those actions are really driving growth for us? And that's really how data can start to help you answer some of those questions. That was kind of general. That's very, up in the air, but let's, take it down into a specific example. So if I'm thinking about a retailer or a brand that's in market, really being able to come out with products that are incremental and competitive versus just a lookalike. We all know how crowded cannabis shelves are. We know how hard it is to stand out on shelf. You really want to set yourself up for success by positioning yourself in the categories that are growing. So an example of this is answering the question, does my brand have a competitive portfolio? Am I in competitive assortment? Are you in the places to win? So the first question is, does your brand or store have gaps versus the competitors in market? It's really easy to tell this in data. So if I look at that first example, I can immediately see some of the differences between this brand one and competitors in market. If you go through that exercise and you get to that second question, you say, is this category or subcategory? Say you've identified like, hey, flower is 44.7% of the sales for my competitors. I'm actually at a gap in that, but let's even see if flower is growing in the first place. I'm not going to spend my resources if I have limited resources going into a category that's declining. So being able to have a clear vision of that path to growth and also your opportunity. And then, if that checks out, you've gone through these whole questions, you've gone through this process, you can finally get to some of those really granular things, like what do the products look like in these markets? What do the pack sizes and attributes look like? And also, even for those ancillary companies that are not maybe operational and making these specific decisions, having a really clear view of where volume is going through the industry and across markets can really be beneficial and actionable for your brands. And then going to the next opportunity, thinking about how you can really leverage this to understand what's driving growth. So why is my brand or store declining? What's driving growth for my brand or store? What are the opportunities for innovation? These are all core business questions that, everyone in our industry in some capacity is starting to think about. So being able to have a clear answer to, is it units that are declining? Are you experiencing a softening demand of either less folks coming in store, less baskets on a daily baskets in terms of your total store volume? There are lots of things that you can start to use the data to help implement in your strategy. But an example of just really clearly understanding, like this first example, that flower is declining, driving the declines for your market or for your brand or for your retail store, so that you can invest your resources there and focus on the areas that are driving decline for you instead of trying to catch all of the opportunities. The second question, right? Are there categories or subcategories or pack sizes that are growing for competitors that maybe I'm not developed in? These have direct impacts to your bottom lines and to the opportunity that you can capture in market in terms of dollar sales. So being able to say, is this an opportunity that's in the market that I'm not developed in? Is this a strength for myself versus the market? That has a lot of value, whether you're speaking to your business partners, investors, and then also what new brands and products are coming into my market. So being able to really say, what are the top growing strains for new products that are coming into the market? What do these products look like in flavors? If it's in gummies, like Amanda just called out for us, that more and more consumers are moving to, particularly those that are coming into the category or coming into the industry. And hopefully, it's really clear to you how these data points can really start to translate in your business. But again, this all helps you set yourself up for success and use your resources more effectively when resources are really limited. And then finally, price. Again, the topic that is top of mind for everyone. So the thing about data can also enable you for in terms of pricing is to make really smart and efficient decisions. So we know that it's a pricing game out there. We know that at BDSA, we see about the average discount be about 25%. That's the highest level. But really, when we think about going into different categories, products, that obviously changes. But really being able to say, is price declining? Does that drive growth or decline? So if you do go on discount, do the units that you sell compensate for the amount of dollars that you lose just on each transaction by decreasing your price? Also, who is your competitive set? So thinking not just who are the top 5 brands in the category. If I'm a small brand, maybe that's not the way that I should be approaching things. Maybe I should start by saying, how am I price positioned? Because when consumers walk up to the shelf, that's what they're encountering. They're looking at, your brand versus another, and then eventually that price point. So being able to say, I'm a premium brand, that makes my competitive set these other premium brands, maybe not the top 5 brands in the category. And that has a lot of value for you selling into a retailer. Also, if you are a retailer, making sure that you have a diversified option on shelf. All of these things can really create a significant value for you. And then 3, am I priced competitively in the price tier? Am I promoting more than my competitors? So like I mentioned at the beginning, we get down into this very much back-to-back decision-making around pricing. But how do we measure that? How do we decide if that actually drove growth for our brands? And being able to look at your discount versus other brands in the market and say, am I selling volume on discount that I would have sold anyway? Because that's money out of your pocket, which is what I think all of us in the cannabis industry are trying to avoid, because we know the government takes enough of that anyway. So with all of the regulations we face. So really the key takeaways here, and I hope something that I'm personally very passionate about and that we're trying to solve for, I think, in the education committee is data can be big. It does take some experience, but it can absolutely be actionable and really, really meaningful for you if you spend some time to really orient yourself with that. So data drives into return on investment. The first thing is, yes, Amanda just put in the chat, data is your friend. It is not to be afraid of. It is your friend. And you have lots of us in the industry that really want to help you take advantage of that for your businesses. So the first thing, data enables teams to use resources effectively and efficiently when those resources are limited. So it's just as much about setting yourself up for success, but also avoiding really costly decisions that you won't have the insight into without data. The second, data drives return on investment when used in decision-making across teams. So the beauty about data is that it doesn't just sit with one person. If you get a data tool and you have access to that as a team, that makes a difference for your marketers. That makes a difference for your growers, being able to know what the top selling strains are. That makes a difference for your finance people or anybody that's in the books, being able actually to say, you know what, our price was right on point. Let's keep it there. Or we need to come down. We need to go up. Really, data makes an impact around the entire community when you really have that as a center of your decision making. And then finally, just building on that, the benefits from data multiply. So when manufacturers and retailers and ancillary companies and everyone is using data, that means that we're all running the most efficient and effective businesses that we can. And it avoids this race to the bottom. I put in a LinkedIn post kind of pubbing this webinar. Let's not race to the bottom anymore. Let's race to the top. And let's really use data to help us make the right decisions and do that most effectively. So these are really the key takeaways. And Samantha is going to, I think, build on top of this also to help understand by having just a general context of also what's going on around you and how you can leverage those news sources to even make your strategies even more data centered with Cannabis NewsHub. Samantha, I'll pass it to you.
Great. Thanks, Lexie and Amanda. It's been a real pleasure being part of the Education Committee for NCIA. So as Lexie just mentioned, I'm with Cannabis NewsHub, and I'm glad to be a part of this session today, showcasing how different types of data can really support your cannabis business. So my focus for the next few slides is going to be on how news and information can really help with your decision-making power. So the use of news gives your company the advantage of having information to make informed decisions about you, your clients, their organizations and companies, and its position and growth for the cannabis space. So a few things about news. So news makes you better equipped to form opinions. It can provide insights into what others are doing in your space, provides information not readily found anywhere else, and news can be used with other data points, such as we've seen today, to make and support company decisions. So let's take a look at the cannabis news landscape. Great. So cannabis as a topic in the news is here to stay. This graph is showing an example of industry topics in the news that have grown at an exponential rate over the last 23 years. And to help put this in a little bit of perspective, we can look at the percentage of growth in some of these topics that are specific topics in cannabis as reported in the news. So if we look at licensing, that topic is up 385%. Advertising and marketing is up 1,108%. Retail and retail shop is up 2,692%. Stock and stock market's up 1,291%. And Amanda, edibles is up 2,172% as reported in the news over this time span. So the growth of industry topics in the news is really of value, as it serves up very valuable information for you to make informed decisions. And the right information is critical opposed to too much information. So if we look at using news to grow your business, we look at our customers and see how they're using cannabis related news to grow and make strategic business decisions on their own for their organizations and clients. So examples of some of these uses are tracking local regulations and changes that can impact their customers and their businesses, understanding banking regulations at the local level to make business decisions, business development, really the who, what, where, when, why, that are readily found in hyperlocal, hard to find news sources through articles, including grand openings and ribbon cuttings, and really the ability to monitor information about your customers, competitors, employees, potential business partners. So getting to the right news is the challenge. So you read news in your spare time, you scan for articles that are of interest to you, and because editors are typically picking the topics, you're probably not getting the results that you might need for you or for your clients. Or you do Google searches or set up alerts, but that probably doesn't work very well either. But what likely really does happen is that you end up managing a cluttered inbox, costing you time and not getting the news you actually need. So when we look at a professional resource, this can truly be a critical asset for your organization. So Cannabis NewsHub supports the problem of news access and management of the news. It gets you to the right news you need for your business needs. So if we look at this slide, this is really a screenshot from Cannabis NewsHub. And really the focus we can see here on is we look at hyper-local news covering legislation, changes, bans, and licensing, et cetera, at the very local community level where we know those changes and things are taking place. Then we take it to the next level with broad national coverage so that we can stay on top of federal issues and trends, and looking at opinions and changes in those issues across the country. And we do this through aggregation of 13,000 plus news sources into one single interface. And that also provides you that you can build your own notifications and searches that will get you exactly what you're looking for as news happens in your community and in your region. If we look at this slide here, you can see I did a search on moratoriums and bans. And what's interesting is that I have 3 articles up. You can see the articles, the name of the article, you can see the source of the article, and then a brief snippet of the article. So I have 3 here, but in this last 4-month period of this search, I actually returned moratoriums and bans specific to cannabis, over 500 articles coming from 350 sources. And when I opened that up to all the data within the database, there were over 50,000 articles related to moratoriums and bans in the full time range. So huge power of the aggregate of news, because now we're looking at what's important to you, which is moratorium bans, not necessarily trying to find the source to find coverage of moratorium bans. And that's really strategic use of news right there. And then the last piece I'd like to point out is we know that this hyper-local concept is very important in business decisions. And this first article you can see here is from the Riverfront Times in Ohio regarding moratoriums and bans in that community. That'd be hard pressed to find in a Google search or another sort of news feed. And what's important is this paper only has a circulation of 81,000. But if you're a business looking to go into this community, or you have a client looking to this, or you already have a business, that article might be super important for your strategy of what you're going to do moving forward with your business and your business decisions. So that really kind of sets the stage for understanding news and how news can be used as the rest of these data points that we've discussed today to benefit your business. So I really feel that using tools built for professionals in the cannabis space will help you save time, get better information that will support your overall business goals of you, your business, or your clients and their businesses. So in closing, as part of the education committee, our goals and objectives are really to share and educate current members and hopefully new members joining NCIA the value of your membership. And part of that value really is we encourage you to visit the NCIA membership page and look at those different discounts that are available through different companies. And I thank you for your time.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much, Samantha, Lexie, and Amanda. I don't think that I've witnessed such a succinct and actionable overview of these benefits the entire time I've worked here at NCIA. So I can't thank you all enough for taking the time to demonstrate the power, but also the actionable insights that you can take away from these platforms to each of our members today. And I'm really thrilled to let all the audience members know that we have a special guest speaker joining us today from NCIA's executive leadership team. None other than Aaron Smith, NCIA's co-founder and current CEO, is here to join to let you know a little bit more about these actionable insights, how they relate to the other benefits within NCIA's membership ecosystem, and how you can take advantage of them following today's broadcast. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Aaron.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you to the presenters today. I want to say these are strategic partners for NCIA that we have vetted, and they have, really have shown themselves to be the cream of the crop in the industry. And we do these partnerships because we want to provide our members with a strategic competitive advantage over those who are kind of sitting on the sidelines of the marijuana reform movement. And that's what this is about. This is about succeeding in your business, yes, but also ensuring that we have a prosperous, equitable cannabis industry coast to coast. And that's what NCIA is working on behalf of our members in terms of advancing policy reforms in Washington, D.C. And so it's great for us to be able to provide these benefits. There are also other benefits that can be found on our website, thecannabisindustry.org. We have member discounts on other data services such as Canna Spyglass, and I believe they provide our membership with for $1 a month. You can look up any licensee and get contact information on the licensee. Similar benefits with Emerald Intel and others out there. So if you go to our website, thecannabisindustry.org, and click on member discounts, you'll find that. And but really what this is about is making sure that the industry, that the strongest rise to the top. And it would be, in my mind, silly for you to not be taking advantage of these benefits because, I don't know how, you can run a business in such a competitive, really harsh environment that the cannabis industry is right now without access to these kinds of information and data services. So if you are not a member of NCIA, if you are a member, please visit the website. Make sure you're taking advantage of these discounts and of the free data that's being offered. But if you're not, please feel free to get on the website, thecannabisindustry.org, look at the membership options, find one that's right for you, and join the movement, join our community, because together we're stronger than we are apart. And I'm happy to answer questions about everything NCIA is doing for the industry, our benefits, and anything else in the chat afterward.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Aaron, for tying that all together and really reinforcing the power and the benefits that get unlocked by NCIA membership, but also the power and the benefits from our vetted and trusted service providers and partners. BDSA, New Frontier Data have been longtime partners, and I've been thrilled to have worked with Samantha over the last few years as Cannabis NewsHub has joined our orbit, and Samantha herself has taken such a leadership role on in our education committee in particular. I've had a few in-person demonstrations of the Cannabis NewsHub platform, and I always love seeing that aggregated data. I have Google alerts set up from 4 or 5 years ago, honestly, probably even 10 years ago for some of our old event title names, and just seeing a platform that can really hone in and get onto some of the real intricacies of it, but also give you those back-end understanding of trends as it relates to news, I think is really, really invaluable. So I guess just to reinforce this for the audience members, we don't have any questions that we received on the Q&A board as of right now. So while we're waiting to get some questions from the audience, I think what would be helpful and what might be an interesting exercise here is to just further sort of demonstrate and maybe give some additional use examples, not to put any of you all on the spot, but, Amanda or Lexie, while we were diving into the pre-broadcast prep session, Amanda, you were touching on some of the unique insights that you were delivering on another webinar surrounding California. Is there anything in particular as far as a use case scenario for some of these actionable insights that you could receive that might be specifically geared towards the audience members today? I know we just hosted some events in Colorado, California, Missouri, and Maryland. Are there any sort of top of mind insights from some other activities that you all wanted to dive a little bit more deeper into for the audience members?
Sure. So I know that a lot of businesses are thinking about expansion. What markets might be right for me? How do consumers differ in different markets? What plays in California? Is it going to play in Ohio? And, one of the things about knowing the data and really understanding consumer insights across the country is understanding where your brand fits in best and what the competition landscape looks like. As I was mentioning on the CCIA website yesterday, if you are a gummy brand who uses isolate or distillate and has 10 milligram pieces, 10 in a bag, you're not alone. There's a lot of brands out there because that's a very popular product form for consumers. But how do you differentiate yourselves? How do you understand what kind of message is going to resonate with the consumer that you are seeking to bring in? And so I think that this involves looking at data and not, involves looking at POS data and understanding product space and, kind of what the share of market is and what the margins are. And it also involves looking at consumer preferences. And not just people that are already coming into your dispensary or buying your brand, but as I mentioned, who looks just like that person, but isn't buying your brand. And one of the things that New Frontier specializes in is customer acquisition. So the ability to identify who is your target customer. Yes, that's great that your ads are working and they're coming in, but who else is out there that should be coming in and how do we reach them? So we talk a lot about growing the pie, right? This idea that yes, we can be focused on current consumers, but also if we're going to be successful as an industry, we need to grow the pie. We need to make the pie of consumers even bigger, and using data to really, as Lexie said, make sure that you're spending your money wisely is a way to grow the pie, but still stay within your margins so that you can be a successful business.
Wow. And grow the pie when you don't have any money. There's so many.
You're baking the pie yourself.
Exactly.
You're like harvesting the eggs from your own chickens.
Exactly, because you know the ingredients. Like we could talk about metaphors for data all day. And yeah, just to build off of what Amanda just said, I think other questions too. The data, back to the point that data is really an ecosystem. It of course makes an impact for you as a marketer. It of course makes an impact for you as a retailer. But I just got back from Benzinga. A lot of the conversations that I had were about potential Pennsylvania adult use. What does the size of that look like? What do we expect the product format to look like? So that if you're a brand and you're thinking about expanding into that market, how do you go to market in a way that's going to set yourself up for success? Florida adult use, I'm sure all of us have heard a lot about. BDSA has a market forecast that really looks at that 2028 data. So it's designed to say, okay, what's the forward-looking perspective of these things too? So not only does data help with fighting within the pie, right, that already exists. How do I get enough market share? How do I grow? How do I avoid decline? But it's also very much about how do I continue to grow? And in a industry that's so dynamic, like we made a joke earlier that our webinars could look completely different in Q3 because we could have rescheduling or something completely different could have fallen out of the sky. Like we are in an industry that's the nature. So being able to really set yourself up with an understanding of, okay, if we expect some of these things to hit at this time, how much money does that what does that look like? What is the actual number? We talk a lot about, trends, or we talk a lot about things that are growing in the market. We can always say, well, talk to, whoever down the street at this dispensary, and they said this is growing a ton. But then being able to actually go back and look and say, okay, that growing a ton is actually, $2.5 million, or that growing a ton is actually only $300,000. That makes a really big difference for you as a brand. So it's not only about just looking today and doing that work, but it's also about thinking about how all of these pieces move together and how you execute on that as a business.
Yeah, that's great. I think that was a great way to build on that and sort of piggyback on Amanda's, really good explanation as to how these platforms can be used to build the pie and also focus on customer acquisition. Sort of taking that on another lens, Samantha, as far as sort of looking ahead goes, are there some sort of unique aspects of the Cannabis NewsHub platform or the trending that you sort of could either think about in your head or that you all might already have set up to sort of do that future forecasting within the platform as it relates to news? I know that might be a little bit of a loaded question, but do you sort of have any insights on how you could utilize Cannabis NewsHub for a similar sort of customer acquisition lens or sort of forecasting for future developments down the road? Oh, and I think Samantha.
I think with news, and the value is that, did I freeze? Am I there?
You're good.
Am I here? I'm good. Okay, great. No, so what I was going to say, so with Cannabis NewsHub, because we have the power of this aggregation of over 13,000 sources from across the country as well as globally, you can track these trends. So, forward thinking or forecasting might be done more at a micro level through the use of news, because if you're in Colorado and you're looking to see what's going to happen in California, and then here we are in Florida wondering how that works, you can look at the sort of the news across the country at that very local level to see how communities handled it as it made their way across. So it's not here in Florida where I am now, but I could look to other cities where it has landed and see what were the impacts, what are the obstacles, what were the good things people did as read in the news. And so I think that, and the ability to set up those alerts, as you talked about, Brian, you were able to, track trends and see what's happened specific to NCIA over the years through Cannabis NewsHub. You can do the same thing with some of those issues and events that you're looking to follow. Whether, it's the banking in one area and what's the banking going to look like in my area, or, as I showed, moratoriums and bans, as those happen in different communities, will that happen in mine? What's the landscape around me and the demographics? And maybe it's looking at those cities that have said no, but now have gone to yes, and those choices that are being made. So yes, I think that it's not quite as analytical necessarily, but I think using the news to support those analytics really gives you a well-rounded picture about how to make those decisions now and moving forward.
Yeah. I was just going to say something that I really appreciate reading the news articles for, and Cannabis NewsHub for particularly, is obviously, I talked a lot about point of sale data today. Those are numbers. I can look at a data point in the point of sale data and then go and say, okay, actually what happened around this, because it can provide a lot of context for you as a business owner on what that data point means. The same way that Amanda talked about, it's not only just understanding what's selling, it's understanding who the consumers are and not having a blind spot to some of those pieces that you might not see in a retail sales data or a POS data type of environment, but something that you might really get a lot of great context and really rich information from is exactly, I think, what Samantha just said, of the context around the data, using the news articles to understand how that actually came to life, especially if you're operating in a market that you're not physically in. We talk to people right nationwide. So actually being able to say, okay, what's going on in this person's market? What actually led to this data point happening that I'm seeing in my data sources now? That has a ton of value, I think, both fun, telling the whole story end to end.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I thought was really interesting when you all initially proposed this session. And then as we worked to sort of develop it together, was how your three platforms really synergistically work together. And I really thought that was interesting, of how you could, come at it from all angles, and really use it to tie these different data points that, I've been in the process of doing event data reporting for the last few weeks, and can tell you how much just having 1 to 2 different platforms connected would simplify and make all of those decision-making strategies easier. Well, one thing that I think would also be another thing to touch on, I know that you all have been offering these benefits and discounts as part of a partnership with NCIA for an extended period of time as it relates to New Frontier and BDSA. And Cannabis NewsHub is a little bit of a newer member to the party over the last few years. I guess from either of your all's experience, and if nothing comes immediately to mind, that's totally fine. But is there a notable sort of story or similar use case scenario that you've worked with an NCIA member business to sort of utilize and take advantage of these insights and platforms to really make an actionable insight that positively helped their growth, or made a decision that helped them pivot out of a certain sector? And if it's not an NCIA member in particular, that's totally fine. But just sort of trying to think about how we could tie this to really emphasizing the importance of the discounts that come along with these packages as part of a annual membership with NCIA.
Yeah, so I'll start.
Yeah.
So I won't name any names. But I think one of the benefits to understanding who your consumer is and like who's coming into your dispensary is understanding, like I said, who's not, but then really being able to target your media and your media strategy. So especially if you're going after a segment that you feel you have a lot to offer, but you're just not seeing them come in. It's not just, and going back to data, it's not just, all right, well, let's create a strategy that we think will speak to this person. It's testing that strategy. So, we can put pixels in ads and see what is the ROI on that ad. What happened? Someone looked at your page. Did they come to your dispensary? Did they go to the competitor down the street? What did they do before and after they came to your dispensary? What moves them? And, consumers are more than just their cannabis. They're whole people, right? And even though they may have cannabis in common, what they do with their other time, where they go, where they put their time, where they put their money, where they put their passions is very different. And, I'll say that if somebody sends me something, it doesn't matter what it's for. If it's going to benefit animals, like really, I'm doing it. Like I'm giving money to it. Like I'm signing up for it. Like, that's how you get to Amanda. And that has nothing to do with cannabis. So understanding that about the consumer beyond just, well, they like pre-rolls and they're a male age 35 to 40. It's like, but what moves them? Right? What's going to get them to say, this is the brand I want to support. This is the dispensary I want to visit. And we're learning more and more, as I mentioned on the webinar yesterday, dispensary shopping is becoming a lot more like grocery shopping. I've got 7 grocery stores in Ukiah. I don't go to all of them. I go to one. I go to Safeway because I know where the aisles are. I know where the food is. I know what to expect. But brand loyalty hasn't gotten there yet. So people may go to the same dispensary, but they're going to choose whatever brand is on sale or is going to meet their needs. So how do we reconcile that, right? How do brands beef up loyalty, and how do dispensaries take advantage of the fact that it's really convenience and ease and expectation that's going to drive someone to your store? So these are all things to understand that data can help with, and, you know, really creating the picture. And the last thing I'll say related to what Samantha said is understanding the community climate is so important. You know, if you decide you want to expand your cultivation facility into another state or into another community, you'd better be reading the news stories about what happened the last time someone tried to do that. Did they get pushback? What did people talk about at the city council meeting? Were people trying to prevent it from happening? You know, understanding the community context around cannabis business expansion and product use is so important to really understanding where to focus your data efforts and what you really should be looking into. And the news really lays down that landscape to make the data work even better for you.
And I can just jump off on that. And thank you for such a lovely setup, Amanda. But to Amanda's point, you know, knowing that news in your geographic area or what you're looking to explore or expand in, your head might be saying, this is really where I want to go. I want to go to the Jersey Shore because that would be great for me and my family and my business. But then when you start reading that very local news, it might be great or it might not be good. And you wouldn't know that necessarily without that news. The other thing I'd like to say, speaking to Brian's point, is this idea of being company ready. And we already, you know, we mentioned it a little bit as a joke, and, you know, as the education committee, we're planning, but things could change. And we don't know, like at the federal level, if something changed, our whole spin on what we might be looking to focus on through our committee would drastically change if that were to happen. So having yourself company ready, whether you're in the cannabis space now or your company will be, like, let's take banking for a perfect example. We know many banks are banking cannabis, but most banks are not, right? But there are banks out there that are so ready, chomping at the bit, that having this type of data, whether it's the analytics or the news information of what's happening around, you know, their community and federally, is going to help them be ready to go when it happens. And if it, you know, which we all know, especially if we all attend lobby days, we'll get there.
Yeah. And I can round us out on that too. I'll give 2 examples. So one, we have talked a lot about go-to-market today. We've talked a lot about what that looks like for you as a company. An example of a project that we've worked on with some members is really, once you've done that research on understanding, is this an environment I want to open up a store in? Once you look at the data and say, okay, what is the total value of this market over time? Being able to say, okay, if I'm going to open this store, what do I need to have on shelf? And that requires a lot of visibility to what's selling in the market. You want to be able to make money as quickly as possible, and being able to compete with the dispensaries immediately around you from an assortment perspective is something that we've helped NCIA members make before. And that has a lot of benefit for you, right? That puts money back in your pocket. And especially everyone who owns a dispensary knows how much that matters. And that's a very tangible, actionable thing that we've worked with lots of folks on. The other thing that I'll just say personally is I know that I'm going to be looking at the market data when I go to lobby days in May, looking at, for the people that I'm going to meet, what's the size of their market? Is it growing? Is it declining? Are their brands really suffering from a price crash that could be really actually supported by some action within that state from the perspective of whether it's banking, whether it's, you know, some of these tax and regulation pieces, being able to really go in and speak with an actual number behind what you're saying can be really powerful and also be a great leave behind. So even something that's maybe not so actionable is literally what you're selling on shelf, but really kind of talking about that data ecosystem like we talked about during our presentation, really using that to say, this is why this is important. This is how many people you can impact with this amount of money. Being able to really ground something in a fertile number that you can return back to has a lot of benefit from us, I think, for us across the industry.
Yeah, I agree. I could not second that anymore. I think that was such a good lead into a little bit of an appeal for our lobby day event itself. So since we have the man himself here in the room, Aaron, while I put up a screen share letting people know when and where they can join us for lobby days, do you want to just let the assembled audience know a little bit more about the impact they could have by joining us in DC next May, or this May, next month?
Absolutely. Lobby Days is the largest cannabis industry fly-in advocacy event in DC in the country. It's an opportunity for members of the cannabis industry from all over the country, from every vertical within the industry, to come into town and tell your story. What's it like getting up in the morning and operating a federally illegal business every day? What's it like dealing with the lack of access to banking services, the unfair provisions of 280E, and then offer solutions through legislative reform that is on the table right now. And NCIA proudly represents our members every single day in DC as your lobbying arm of the industry and of independent businesses. But it's a lot different for lawmakers to hear from us versus hearing from you, from the people that are in the trenches, working this every single day. And so, it's also just, from a practical standpoint, we are able to do 200 meetings in 2 days, about a day and a half. And that's, that would take us many more days doing that just on our own. So that really gives more eyes and ears on the ground for us of what's happening in DC and what different offices are saying, congressional offices are saying. And finally, it's a really enriching experience for you. I sometimes laugh that, NCIA Lobby Days makes it so that our members can see the challenges we're up against, because you sit down with a member of Congress and they're like, what? I've never heard of this 280E thing. And you really kind of understand how the political system is working. And in addition to that, you meet friends for life at Lobby Days. It's not like an event where you kind of come in the evening and do some networking and have a drink and go home. It's an actual kind of constructive effort where we put you together in teams of people they could be from your same industry sector, but they most likely won't be. They're probably people from all over the industry, and we set you loose on Capitol Hill for a day and a half to really constructively work to persuade and educate members of Congress and their staffs. And there's something really special about that, I think. So really want to encourage all of you to attend Lobby Days. The cannabisindustry.org/lobby days. I believe Brian put it in the chat. If you're a member of NCIA, you have really deeply discounted registration. But if you're not a member of NCIA, you're welcome to come as well. And I believe pricing goes up on May. I'll let Brian say the date, but I know the pricing goes up in a couple of weeks. So do so soon. And it's important for us to get you to know you're coming so that we can plan your visit to make sure that your visit to DC is as productive as possible.
Yeah, fantastic, Aaron. Yeah, and just to reinforce and tie that together, just so that we have as much advanced time to make the most impactful meetings and assign you to the most impactful teams, we will have a late registration deadline that kicks in 1 week out from the events kicking off. So May 7th is your last deadline to get the most affordable pass that you can. NCIA members are all afforded an incredible discount on our non-member rate. So even if you are not a member at the moment, you can still join us. But if you are a member, you again, as similar to the rest of the benefits that you'll unlock in this webinar, you'll unlock significant savings and be able to make a serious impact with us in DC. Our lobby day trainings that will be virtual this year are going to be held the week prior as well, on the 9th and the 10th. So make sure to get your registration in so that you can be locked in and oriented prior to that virtual training session. With that, I just want to thank our assembled panelists for presenting today's amazing educational webinar led by NCIA's Education Committee, no less. So huge thank you to Amanda Reiman, Lexie Barton, and Samantha Hobbs. Let's give them a huge virtual round of applause in the chat room by letting them know what the best takeaway that you're taking away from today's conversation is, and give us some immediate feedback on this outro survey that I just activated. As always, we're going to close out today's webinar by giving you a little bit of a preview of some other upcoming activities and thanking some of our sponsors and supporters of our recent in-person activities as well. So huge thank you to the 50 plus member businesses that have already signed on to support and ensure that our 12th annual Cannabis Industry Lobby Days is as successful and as impactful as it will ever be. There are plenty of sponsorship opportunities that are still available, provide you an incredible amount of exposure during these final 3 weeks leading into the session, and then on site during the 4 in-person activities that we'll have spread throughout the 2-day event. And if you're trying to meet and greet all of our congressional champions, I can personally tell you there's no better way to do that than signing on to support these events. Huge thank you as well to the 40 plus member businesses that ensured our inaugural Stakeholder Summit series that were held from February through the beginning of April were such a resounding success. If you haven't learned more about those Stakeholder Summit events, head to NCIA's website, click on the image in our carousel banner, and learn more about the success of those events that saw us bring this summit series to California, Missouri, Maryland, and Colorado. And most importantly, follow the link to give us a submission to our 2024 event survey. Your feedback matters and will truly shape the scope and the direction of our initiatives in Q3 and Q4. We're offering a $50 Amazon gift card for anybody that completes the survey by the end of the week. So stay on the lookout to your inbox and get a submission in before that is over. And then last but not least, for all of the current members and the prospective soon-to-be members that are here in the audience, make sure to further learn how to maximize your membership with our monthly member orientation sessions. Those take place the 3rd week of every month. Next May, we'll be having one right after Lobby Days concludes on Tuesday, May 24th. And it sort of builds on the format and the structure that you saw in today's session, teaching you how to maximize your benefits through our various discounts and how to orient yourself in all of our online and in-person platforms to manage your membership. All right, and that wraps our insightful discussion on this edition of Committee Insights. A huge thank you once again to our guest speakers, Amanda Reiman, Lexie Barton, and Samantha Hobbs, alongside Aaron Smith, no less. Remember, leveraging professional resources and strategic partnerships is key to driving sustainable growth and success. So I hope you found today's session insightful and valuable in exploring the essential member-to-member discounts offered through our partners at BDSA, New Frontier Data, and Cannabis NewsHub. Don't forget to take advantage of the enhanced partner discounts available exclusively to NCIA members. And remember, NCIA membership is your gateway to maximizing these benefits and staying ahead in the ever-evolving cannabis landscape. Thank you once again for your participation. We look forward to seeing you at future webinars and in person next month at Lobby Days. And until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and continue to thrive in the cannabis industry. Thank you and have a great day.
Mm-hmm.